oVertone was a bootstrapped company entirely until we exited. That was the first time we ever took any capital on. And we sort of were in this sweet spot in 2014 where influencer marketing was sort of on the rise. And back then it was really heavy in the beauty industry and they were called beauty gurus. And as a millennial, I was like, okay, well, I know we're going to do this. But also as an activist and as a feminist, and in my previous life, I was a full-time photographer. And I was like, I never photoshopped, I never digitally altered. This was pre-Facetune, pre-sort of all this stuff. I never wanted to show somebody something that wasn't real. And especially when we're talking about hair color, so much of it is altered. So much in the beauty industry is altered. Like, it was really important for me that what people saw is what they got and what they experienced. And we really focused on something that we ended up calling beautiful instructions, which was like, how do we show people how to use the product, what it looks like, what it feels like, and what it actually does to your hair. Hair color, especially the way we were doing it at oVertone, already has so much magical thinking around it, grounding it in reality with these sort of videos that were, except for basic color correction, totally unaltered and just really true to what the product experience meant. That the client lifecycle, they would see the ad, they would buy the product, they would use the product. It felt very true to the ad and it generated a real trust between us and the community. We grew organically that way for the first 3 years, and year over year was, even month over month, was just wild growth. We didn't pay for advertising for our first 3 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, personally, when I'm shopping online, one of the first things that I do, I think Amazon may have trained me this way, honestly, but I go straight to the reviews. I want to see actual product photos of someone wearing the shirt or wearing the shoes so I can see, because I'm not going to be in a full studio. Yeah, I have lights for this podcast, but I'm not going to be in a full studio, wearing it like they are. So I like to see the authentic way that it actually would fit on me. So you're saying with this, like, you really focus on all of the marketing material for, product photos on the product page and everything just being as unedited as possible.
100%. And actually, I think Liz Georgie over at Cena said it best. It was renders get returns. And for us, it was like, how do we really communicate what this product does? And what we ended up doing was something called hair strands, but affectionately internally we called it hair bacon, because after a while, how we styled the hair extensions, it really started to look like bacon. So that was we got work on hair bacon. That was what we called it. But for every color we had, we would create these extensions where we would color the extensions using our product, and we would try and get it on blonde, like a platinum blonde, so like a really clean base, like the brightest base we could, a medium brown, and a very dark brown. And then eventually we were finding and actually creating our own natural red extensions so that we could show people sort of what it would appear on their hair. And that was to create and like continue to build that trust. We weren't digitally creating these. It would have been really easy for us to sort of go into Photoshop and take one photo of one piece of hair and sort of overlay these shades and give you an approximate idea. But we really wanted people to understand the potential of what this could do and also what it couldn't do. And the creation of these hair strands is really important. I have washed so many hair extensions in my life. So many. And actually, we also used it as a client services tool, which is just as important for your marketing. When you get somebody writing in because they're trying to understand what this will do for them, our client services team was trained on mixing these colors together and making these hair strands, and sort of like the firsthand knowledge of having worked with the product over and over and over and over, so we could be really clear with our community and building up that resource.
Yeah, and that education is a very important piece as well. Did you all focus on like subscription? Did you have a subscription model, or did you have other ways to push lifetime?
So we had a subscription model for a while. We struggled with it a little bit because of the breadth of our SKU, I will say. And also the technology while we were building it wasn't quite where we wanted it to be to have like a truly successful program. So I would say if I could go back in time, emphasizing that like sort of return, like continuing to come back for the same color would have been great. And if we could have customized it so that people could more easily manage their own subscription, that would have been really valuable. The assumption behind subscription, right, is like the same thing coming to you over and over. But the reality of hair color is that it's an expressive tool. So you may want oVertone every month, but you might want vibrant blue one month or pastel purple another month, and like changing that up. The technology wasn't quite where we needed it to be, but it could have been a really valuable tool for us for sure.
Yeah, I know there's been some advancements with subscription, so companies can do things like that with it as well. And so you said you work with clients now, helping them, I don't want to say bridge their values to, their messaging, but really connect their values to what they put out into the world. What do you generally find you have to kind of coach on or guide people through to reach that point?
Sure. I think one of the things that people hear a lot is like, take your values off the wall, action them in your business. And like a very easy thing to say, but like pragmatically, the steps of that are just as simple, but they're not talked about. So I talk about getting your values working in your business in sort of 4 key pillars. And one of those pillars is product. And that's sort of where a lot of people get stuck because they're like, how do I make sure that my product is being like worked by my values? And just to take a really obvious one from oVertone, we had, during our time, we had a core value of intersectional feminism, which is a really sort of heady topic. And intersectional feminism basically says that our identities are sort of all at these crossroads and they give us agency or deny us agency at different places in society. So like as a young, white, Jewish, queer, cisgendered person, depending on the room I'm in, these things either give me agency, they develop trust ahead of my presence, or they deny me that. And that's really clear in like funding when you see like, women get such a tiny percentage of funding or, sort of any of these things with business. Where intersectional, and then you think about, okay, you have a core value of intersectional feminism. And how does that fit into hair color? Like, how would you even draw the correlation? And for us, it was in a couple different ways, actually. It was really solidly put behind. Our product was tested on hair types, super straight through super, super curly. We made sure that not only did we have training for our client services on how to talk about each of those hair types, like correctly and intellectually and from a place of understanding, but that they also use correct terminology. We tried to make sure that our marketing was really focused on ensuring that that diversity was really visible so that everybody could see how they belonged in our company. The product was definitely usable across all of those textures and it worked across all of those textures. We could accurately communicate. We made a whole product called Purple for Brown for folks, especially who have curly hair, who are resistant to bleaching it so that they could engage with the product a little bit more fully. So it was really about like, how do we use these values as inspiration and as guiding light in terms of making sure that we're creating that inclusive and not gate-kept society around something that can feel really like, well, you can really only have purple hair if you look like this, or like, I'm a mom and I can't have pink hair. It's like, well, how do we bridge that gap, educate you, teach you, show you you're welcome here, and also make sure that the product is useful for you? I mean, down to even like we received some feedback around like, how would I tell the difference between shapes in the shower if I'm like low eyesight? Or like we were one of the first companies that I know about on Instagram to use image captions. So like before Instagram had that feature where you could do an image description in the back end that a screen reader could read, we were putting those immediately sort of into our captions so that screen readers would be able to like give that experience more wholeheartedly for our clients. So it's sort of like making sure, first of all, for a potential coaching client of mine who is like, how do I action my values in my product? It feels like there's no relationship or it's really hard. Like, if I've got a value of transparency and I have a SaaS product, how am I going to cross that gap? How am I going to bridge that gap? It's like, well, let's talk about what transparency means to you. How do we define that? And then let's look at your product. And first, let's make sure that it's not antithetical to your value. And then let's see how we can bring it up.
And if we're in the software and transparency, put your pricing on the website. I don't want to get on a call with somebody. I don't want to get on a call with somebody. Just let's put the pricing on the website, please. We just want to see it. Yeah. I'm interested. But this call makes me not. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things.
Awesome. And I'm hearing something frequently in what you're saying, which is you all were very focused on customer listening or like, conversations with the customers. And Yeah, I'm always trying to turn things into processes, and that might overcomplicate it. But I mean, it sounds like you from the top down had a priority on listening to the customer and then relaying that information to the people or the teams that needed to hear it so that it could, go throughout the business. Did you have like, you meetings to talk about these things or like specific communication pathways or what? Because I could tell it was a priority.
I mean, like, I wish I could tell you that we were really sophisticated, but I think the reality of the scaling startup is that, you're not. And a lot of it was really just conversation. And a lot of it was, did you see that comment? Or, eventually what we had was like a more streamlined pathway between client services and the marketing department where like communication could happen, or even R&D, like, hey, we noticed this color is a little funky. So those pathways were always pretty open, and that feedback directly from clients, especially when they were writing in, was prioritized as far as like conversations in the room. But I think something that we had to our advantage is we were definitely our own customer, and our employees were our own customer. And we emphasized participation within the industry as well. We had something that we called a beauty budget for a while, where folks received a stipend that they could spend on anything within the industry. So one, they could learn about other people's processes. How was their checkout? How was their box when it arrived? What was their client services like? And it was a way to like stay engaged as a consumer, but also stay like on top of trend. Like, oh, these people are doing these eco-friendly boxes. Can we figure out where they got that box from? Or like, this company sent me so much litter that my entire house is now infected and I can't get rid of it. So it was a way to like stay participating in that cycle. And then also most of our teams used our product. So it was also that immediate feedback from them as users as well. Or like, who knows how to get, this color out of a fiberglass tone the best. And immediately we'd have like 18 options from just our employees alone. So it was really like a community-based effort. People were interested and engaged, and we wanted to keep everyone that way.
I love it. I love it. And, as we're talking about content, and I know you put a high priority on content early on in the business, where do you generally put business owners' focus when they're looking at getting started with content and understanding, how much should we put out and what should it look like and et cetera?
I think it's really easy to overcomplicate it. And that was one of my fatal flaws. As like a fine art student, I was like, I want it to be pretty. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is like, it doesn't have to be pretty as long as it's effective. And it's sort of it's sort of like a balance. You figure out what works, you look at the data, you produce more of that, you show more of that. It doesn't have to be super fresh all the time. But there's also a difference between only sticking with what works and pushing the envelope. So one of the things that we noticed early on when we were producing content is that, especially our UGC or our influencer generated content, not just user, but like broad spectrum, photos of skinny women with their backs to the camera, long straight hair that was colorful, those images typically performed the best in terms of engagement and in terms of like inspiration to get people drooling. But because only sharing folks of that gender expression, body type, position, and hair type was antithetical to our values, we were like, women with curls, men with straight hair, long hair, short hair. We really needed to show the gamut. And what we actually noticed over time is that the industry changed with us and people's tastes changed with us. We weren't just going to show that one thing, but part of our branding message was always really in our content of like, here is all of the things that we're going to show you so that, you'll see yourself, and it's not just going to be sort of what's prioritized, because trends change, things change. We have to be true sort of to ourselves. The thing that I would say about working with influencers in UC, the game has changed so much since 2014, and especially since I was directly involved in it. But what I've noticed is really consistent is that there's so many ways to depersonalize that relationship, but the priority really is in the personalization. People want to feel as though not just like we're working a transaction here. It's really important to value the work and effort that goes into creating this content across the board, like whether or not it's your team or an influencer or one of your users who's like spending 30 minutes literally constructing something out of your product so they can share it online. Like that's an act of love and service, and respecting that effort, both financially and with attention and relationship, I feel like is such a critical part that a lot of people tend to skip out on. I'll look at, social media job descriptions or or hear some of my colleagues talk about what it takes, like, I want to get into social media. I wrote a job description. Here it is. What do you think? And it just like hurts me on the inside, because I think that there's a real underappreciation for what it takes to make this content. Even if you're using every efficiency tool, it really is a labor of love and thoughtfulness. And so like creating a space to appreciate how much this actually takes out of somebody to produce, and using that sort of appreciation to inform your relationships with these people, and making sure that they know that that their work is hard and it matters. It's not as simple as just snapping a photo. It's engaging with the brand.
And really understanding the audience as well. I mean, you look at, different brands perform different things. Liquid Deathwater, who is one of the content kings right now.
Total, incredible brand. Wow. Like their website alone is so phenomenal. I admire them so deeply, honestly.
Yeah, they just had a campaign, I think 2 weeks ago, that came out that was the Travis Barker Enema package. Like you could purchase that, and one of their main competitors, I can't remember who it was, actually posted it on Twitter, and Liquid Deathwater responded like, "Thank you for this free publicity, like getting us in front of all of your customers here. We appreciate this." Yeah, I mean, really listening to the customer, understanding that. And I know you've always placed a high priority on authentic content. What's your take on, I have to ask about the buzzwords here for the listeners. What's your take on AI content with this? I mean, because can be very far from authentic.
Yeah, I have real firm opinions on this, but I really struggle with it. I think that there's a real value in AI and the tools that it's making it better and easier and simplifying, and also engaging people on a creative level that maybe they haven't had access to before. I definitely would say that working with AI as a prompter is like an art form in and of itself. It requires skill, knowledge, time to really build the capacity to do that. And it's really, really interesting. Thing that I worry about with AI content is that my understanding of it, and I want to be clear that I haven't myself actually worked with it. I like, it's just not, it's not for me. Right. So this is from what I've seen, experienced, read about, learned about. My major concern with it is as AI works, it's learning to understand your preferences, the preferences of the community, and it's machine learning off that data set and sort of what we're feeding it. Right. So similarly to what I talked about before, skinny women with straight hair with their backs to the camera and with long, that long, straight, colorful hair, those would get prioritized over more innovative images that push the needle or align with the brand. I would caution any brand, any marketing company, any founder against over-reliance on something that algorithmically condenses stuff into the most clickable content, because that's not innovative thinking. It's what's current immediately right now. There's still a value in sort of like that future forward creativity and like what humans can think of for the brand that AI can't spit back to us because it hasn't been spit in yet. So like, I would say it's a tool, not an employee. And I think not confusing those things is really important. It can help you with your copywriting, can help you produce images like way faster maybe than you've ever done before. But is it coming from you or is it coming from the void? And if everything starts coming from the void and it's all monotonous, one, there's an opportunity for you to stand out by not producing what AI is producing, right? So never ignore that opportunity that's hanging out there. But also don't let yourself get sucked in by the ease of producing something just because you think like, oh, well, AI will get me that answer faster, because that doesn't always mean it's the right answer for you, or the answer that's going to actually take your business where it needs to go. You started your business, not AI. And that needs to also stay a constant.
Yeah. So almost like it's focused solely on optimization. It's missing the empathy and really the brand value, the mission that's going to, ultimately take you in the right direction that you need to go in, is kind of what you're saying.
It's like that, especially because if you're only getting your content from there, it's just going to stay static and it's going to be informed by what everybody else is doing. I think it's going to be really hard to stand out. And it's also going to be really hard for you to innovate and move your brand forward or see ahead of the curve. Like so many brands that actually succeed are folks that are doing things that are just 2 steps ahead. But if you're focused on like what algorithmically is going to perform the best or optimizing or saving money on just use, these tools instead of like taking the time to truly think ahead of that corner, I think folks are going to really struggle.
Yeah, you would almost need like a data feed in of sentiment or like what the current climate is in the world. Like exactly. Twitter, which people say that's why Elon Musk purchased Twitter in the long run is for that. Who knows? He's smart. I don't know if he is doing that, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where I personally think with AI, it kind of like blockchain or crypto. I know it's a stretch to compare, but with crypto,
I'm
like
right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't expect like your grandparents to send you money through crypto. Like it's just not as easy as it could be, right? You have to sometimes change chains and things like that. So I think with AI, like usability, like the user interface, and then just trust in it. So, cause AI can hallucinate. I think when someone focuses on solving those 2 things of making it really easy to use and trustworthy, then it will have, a good uptake. And I think, data management, like busy work, research, those types of things would be great for it, right? Like the busy work so you can focus on doing the stuff that, you love to do out there.
My husband says something that I love, which is he's like, I just want AI to be able to do my taxes. And until, but I also saw something that I really loved, which is like, I think so often the drudgery of work and where we find ourselves really burnt out. So when we think about like businesses holistically, and especially when we think about marketing, it is a data game. It is sort of like less creative potentially than we would want it to be. It is really like systematic. I think we have to be really careful of what we sacrifice and what we want to optimize. And there is something to be said about like it sucks when machines do your writing, do your art, do your, do all these things that like bring out passion in us as people, but don't fucking do your taxes. Like, you know what I mean? So I would love to see folks use AI as a tool and not as a replacement for their creativity, because I think it'll really stun and for in the long run, not just their business, but like our collaborative community as a whole. Like there's a reason why Liquid Death is so incredibly amazing. It's because it's so different. We were all just like, did somebody just put like a skull on a can of water and expect us all to buy it? And like, we did. Yeah. So there's something to be said for just having that and not outsourcing that part of it.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, creative is the first real use. I'm going to say it's the first real use case. I'm not, super in depth with AI, but it seems like it's the most prominent use case for people is creative or some type of copywriting. I'm trying to go super deep with this right now and wonder if it's because everyone wants to be creative and just doesn't want to take the time to do it but why do you feel like that is?
I think there's something to be said for folks who have a vision and really struggle to replicate it. So my degree is in fine art, in photography specifically. And I was a photographer for many years and I still am. And something that really clicked for me with photography is I was finally able to replicate what I saw in my head into something in real life. And I think for a lot of people, AI artwork gets them there. I remember the whole Lensa AI thing that happened on Instagram where suddenly everybody had like an artistic rendition of their bodies. And that was full of flaws, right? Like we had a totally unmitigated data set. We had art theft. We had derivative stuff. We had, folks of color were being made to like have European features because that's what the algorithm was putting out, which I think is a huge issue with AI personally. And like colonialism and AI, there's probably a whole thesis that could be written about it. And if I were getting my doctorate, it might be what I would do. But that aside, there's something about wanting to be seen by an artist and also the hyper independence of our like social culture and immediacy culture. Again, instant gratification of feeling seen by an artist for a price that I could have never thought about and that can participate in this movement. everybody's life is made better through art and through creativity, whether they're producing it, receiving it, or experiencing it. There could not be so many subscription services. Succession wouldn't be nearly as successful if it wasn't like a deeply creative and well thought out show. Marvel, I mean, what a freaking multiverse of like how people are creative together and like what that can build. Creativity is desired, but it's hard. And when we're also sat down by having AI not do our taxes, then I think it becomes a real struggle for folks, or they're told that they're not creative, or it's eaten out of them, or seen as a waste of time. What I think can really help like marketing companies, founders, businesses is like not removing that part of it. So much of business already feels like it's dehumanizing, but when we can re-inject like why we care. I was actually having this conversation just yesterday with a group of my colleagues and close friends, and we were talking about how our business can so benefit from our own creativity, especially as founders. That's why we get into it in the first place. We have these creative ideas. They're different. We want to put them out there. And then over time, the drudgery of our work means that we're trapped in sort of these more day-to-day items, and we sacrifice our creativity or outsource it, or it just never gets injected again outside of like maybe those first couple of years. But what if we could refocus the emphasis and say like, okay, well, what's really important here is that we keep using our creativity to innovate. And we keep using our creativity to keep us ahead of the curve. And we keep using our creativity to show how we're different and why that's good, as opposed to constantly optimizing for the popular. And I think constantly optimizing for the popular is soul sucking. And it's so hard better when you can just say like, you know what? I'm not straightening my hair and taking a photo from the back because that's what's getting the click today. Because over time, like the trend, human beings aren't a trend. So.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I mean, at the time of this recording, I'll say that because with AI, things change every 3 days. But
we're going to hang up and there's another.
Yeah. I just saw today, someone told me Figma just released text prompting for design. So you can now text prompt in Figma for web design.
Wow.
Adobe just recently released text prompting for Photoshop.
Yeah. So now I've been, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it's really interesting to see how it's, I saw recently an AI app that was accordingly, it says it was AI for creating Spotify playlists. I think I was just working through tagging, but interesting to see. It's gotten me some good songs. So, I've enjoyed it there, but
yeah. The last thing I'd really like to say about AI is we although can't remove the human element from it. We want to think that it's all automated and that AI is doing all the work, but the likelihood that there is actually human labor going on the other side of it is really high. And the more that I think that there's a real importance and a real lesson in embracing our humanity and not trying to erase and diminish the labor that we're doing. Right. And I think we all feel the impacts of that when we work in a day job or a day-to-day company. We're like, wow, I'm really just a cog in this machine. I feel invisible. I feel like I'm not, my work isn't valued and it's not valuable. But if we can understand like the invisible labor that goes behind all of the things that make our lives easier, learning about supply chain in my company, for example, was an incredible learning opportunity for me. And has expanded my ability for empathy across a lot of things. Like a package is delayed. Can't catch me whining about it. There's so many human touches that go into all of these processes that we only see as technical and automated. And recognizing that even with something like AI, it's not absent of human touch and having empathy for these processes and what they give or don't give us, or what they take and don't. One of my favorite questions is like, even for things you really want and desire, what's at risk if you have them? I want easily automated images that I can just go to the internet and grab. It hurts nobody. Well, what's at risk if you have that? Whereas, potentially my passion, my creativity, my desire to do the work, my feeling as though my thoughts matter, my feeling as though my creativity matters. Those are big sacrifices and we should be aware of.
But we're okay with sacrificing taxes.
Oh, totally okay with sacrificing taxes. Yeah. No,
totally okay.
Send it right up to the gods. I'm good with that.
Perfect. So look, we end off every episode with 3 rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to start throwing these your way. If you had to summarize everything we discussed into a marketing mindset, what mindset should marketers have when it comes to authenticity?
embrace your values and lead with them first.
And for anyone listening that's in the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in the marketing industry, what role or marketing roles do you think will have the highest demand in the next 3 to 5 years?
AI prompter, copywriter, and social media management, social media strategy, I would say.
Strategy, super important. And tell us, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about you and the work that you do?
You can go to my website, LioraDudar.com, LIORAUDAR.com, or my Instagram, K_Leora.
Awesome. Liora, it was great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.